Audrey Henley here, and today we're talking about commas, that pesky punctuation mark that bothers everyone. Honestly, the hardest part of the English language to learn. And yeah, you're not going to see my face today because it's just going to be squiggles and looking at things in Microsoft Word. But let me know how you like this format. I know I really enjoy watching videos with squiggles and people drawing. For some reason, it just feels fun to watch. Commas. We've all been taught some very confusing information about, particularly when English teachers like to tell us we stick them wherever there's a pause in a sentence, and that is not true. There are rules that make sense, and so yeah, I'm going to be going through that. Shout out, here I'll write this down, Casa Grande, and a link maybe to her books page. It won't be an affiliate link or anything, but she has written some of the best books about syntax and punctuation and grammar that I've read. They make sense, and they really helped me get a clear grasp of why we write the way we do in English. And the books I've read by her is The Best of Sentences, The Worst of Sentences, and The Joy of Syntax. Both are really great. So this video is for all of us writers who are pretty good at grammar, punctuation, syntax, and whatever, but you don't really get why the rules are the way they are, and you still sort of struggle once in a while with knowing where commas go and stuff like that. So that's what this is for. And these tips are things that I've learned along the way that have helped me to get better at knowing where commas go, and I use this stuff all the time when I'm copy editing, which I'm doing right now. I had punctuation on the brain, and that's sort of why this video came about, because I was like, what should I do a video about? And honestly, all I could think of was punctuation. So commas felt like a safe place to start. Anyway, let's go on. I'm gonna go through a few different things that have helped me figure out how to use commas and why we use them the way they do. And the first thing here is independent clause. It's a group of words that could or do stand alone as a sentence. You can combine multiple independent clauses into more than one sentence, but there are a set of rules that you have to follow to connect them. So to have an independent clause, we need a subject and a verb. You'll know that. So Susan, subject, walked. That is a complete sentence. But you can combine more than one, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. You can have multiple groups of words that could be a complete sentence on their own in one sentence. Next thing I want to go over is prepositional phrases. So if you think of that song, over the hills and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go. So to grandmother's house we go is actually the independent clause. So let's just write that in here. That is the actual independent clause. Over here, this is all prepositional phrases. And these are always sort of extra. You can always sort of cut them out of sentences when you're trying to figure out things like subject-verb agreement. I'll show you what I mean a little bit later. These are things like over, through. It's what a squirrel can be in regard to a tree. So that is something I learned in school, and I'm not sure how helpful you will find it, but for some reason it helps me remember what prepositional phrases are. Here's my little squirrel. So things like in, on, over, through, by, but you have to remember weird ones like among and throughout, things like that. In lists of over 2 items, you need a comma after each item. So it can be a list of simple objects. I like oranges, apples, and bananas. And here, this is the cereal comma. So having a comma after that second item there, that's the cereal / Oxford comma. And I think I wrote this wrong. There needs to be a comma after each item. That's not true for the last item. So commas to separate. Sorry about that. But the thing about lists is it's not always just oranges, apples, and bananas. Sometimes it's more complex phrases. So Sasha liked to play the trombone, walk to school with her friends, and play Breath of the Wild on her Switch. So they all have their own verbs. Play, walk, play again. Wow, nice variety there, Audrey. You can have lists with like all these complex phrases like we do here and another independent clause. So that's why I wanted to put lists in here, because if you don't always think about it, you'll lose sight of where commas need to be. We all know where the commas go in oranges, apples, and bananas, but just remember that lists can be a little bit more complicated than that. Okay, so here we're talking about independent clauses and what can separate them from the rest of a sentence or another sentence. So, because it's an independent clause, you can always just have a period, and that means the sentence is done. So, Susan walked. But then we have semicolon. So, our good old friend semicolon, Susan walked. Mike biked. So, semicolons can just separate two independent clauses. You gotta make sure both are actually independent though. And then we have the comma and the fanboy. So fanboy is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So just go ahead and remember that. Fanboy, boys for so. Remember that. It's a really good acronym to remember. And so this is when you combine two independent clauses. This is an independent clause here, and this is an independent clause here, and it's being stuck together with comma and a fanboy, and is one of the fanboys. So that's what allows it to be a full sentence together. And because Mike biked, you need that comma there. You can't just have Susan walked and Mike biked. That would be incorrect because you need that comma and the fanboy in order to make that a complete sentence. You just need that comma there. That's a rule. So I wanted to bring this up as a special point. The last independent clause separator is where the most people get confused. So those fanboy words, which again is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, they can be used without a comma to connect dependent clauses. So up here we had Susan walked and Mike biked. So let's do an example where we have one of those fanboys, but it's not actually going to be used to separate two independent clauses. So Susan walked and sang. So she's walking and singing at the same time. And we do not put a comma here because sang is a dependent clause. It needs more context. It can't be a sentence on its own. So Susan walked and sang. No comma there. This is not its own sentence. So yeah, if you can get that straight and remember what an independent clause is, what it isn't, you're good. Usually it's pretty easy to spot, like if there's another subject here, so you'd need like a mic, you'd need another subject here in order to make that another independent clause that would require its own comma and fanboy in order to be separated. Parentheticals. So this is extra information that doesn't add to the overall grammar of the sentence. And so I'm going to bring up this crazy sentence here, which sounds weird, but is absolutely correct. So Leslie and his friends loves ice cream. It's loves. That is correct because this here is in its little parenthetical phrase. And so it goes out the window when we're talking about subject-verb agreement. So this is the subject and his friends doesn't come into the equation at all. And this is the verb. And so Leslie loves, that's correct, subject-verb agreement. It's easy to spot here with these parentheses, but the thing is, parenthetical phrases can be made with parentheses, em dashes, and commas. So this could be Leslie, comma, and his friends, comma, loves ice cream, and that would also be correct, which is, I know, it's crazy. So this isn't a kind of sentence you would see in the wild. but it is technically correct. So getting good at spotting parentheticals can help with punctuation and grammar issues a lot, because as I was kind of saying earlier with the prepositional phrases, you can sort of ignore them, because really what matters is the subject and the verb. Those are what you care about. Trying to figure out, subject-verb agreement. You can read through the sentence. So like here, Leslie and his friends, oh, that's a parenthetical. I can skip over that in my head. So then you go, Leslie loves, and oh, that sounds correct. This one's interesting. So subordinating conjunctions are words that, if used at the beginning of a sentence, make an otherwise independent clause dependent. Let's say Susan walked. We know that is an independent clause. So you can put a period there. But then if we put because Susan walked, that doesn't feel complete, right? Because Susan walked, comma, she burned some calories. I don't know. You need something there to finish off the sentence. And some common ones are because, although, until. There's a lot of them. I haven't found it useful to memorize them because they can usually pick them out by ear. They make sentences feel incomplete. But what happens if you have Susan walked because the car broke down? Do we need like a fanboy? Do we need a comma? Like, what is happening here? No. Susan walked because the car broke down. So this phrase here, because the car broke down, that isn't an independent clause. That can't be its own sentence. And it actually just kind of smooshes into Susan walked. So all of this kind of just is part of Susan walked because the car broke down. Like, you see how it folds together? But here, because Susan walked, the ice cream melted. In that case, when you have this subordinating conjunction up here at the start, it's sort of like an introductory phrase. So you have because Susan walked, comma, the ice cream melted. And this ice cream melted is the main independent clause. And you can sort of just consider this an introductory phrase to the sentence. I'm not sure this is a technical term, introductory phrase, but it's something I've just kind of thought about to help me figure out where I need to stick some commas. Okay, so we're gonna go through some sentences. We got good old Nancy walks. That is a good old independent clause, as we've kind of been using. And then we add a prepositional phrase, so to the store. Yeah, and you can tack these onto the end of sentences without adding commas. And then we have the sentence, in Minnesota, Nancy walks to the store. So when starting the sentence, I do like to put a comma there. So this is a little controversial, and I think style guys will differ on this, especially if it's short like this. But I think, why not just keep it the same throughout and just always have, when we start with a prepositional phrase, we put a comma before the main independent clause. That's my opinion. But it makes sense to me, so that's what I do. These next sentences aren't going to be correct. I'm going to add in the commas. So we got a parenthetical somewhere in here. So Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store. Well, if you can pick out the subject here is Nancy, and the verb is walks. Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store. And Nancy walks is correct. So now we've got a parenthetical and a list. Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas. Subject is Nancy again, and it's going to be V is the walks, and this can be offset. Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas. That is a list. So, and do that. This one here is the serial comma. Some people say it's optional, others will fight you and say it's not optional, but just pointing that out there. Walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas. Next, we have a sentence with a prepositional phrase, a parenthetical phrase, a list, and multiple independent clauses. Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas, but she does so begrudgingly. Go ahead and sit here for a second and try to figure out where those commas would go. I'll squiggle something down here while I wait. Nancy is that subject again. Despite being tired, walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas, but she does so begrudgingly. Okay, so Nancy, despite being tired, walks. So that's kind of the same as we've been doing. Walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas. That looks like another list, so we'll go ahead and add those in. This is a serial comma. And then, do we need a comma here is the question. So normally you don't need a comma after a list, and that's actually something I see a lot, is you have a list and then there's just sort of a comma after it for no reason. But let's take the list out and just read it without it. So Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store, but she does so begrudgingly. This is its own independent clause. You have the subject here, she does so, does, can be the verb. She does so begrudgingly. That is a independent clause, and so we need a comma plus this but here is a fanboy. So Nancy, despite being tired, walks to the store for apples, oranges, and bananas, comma, but she does so begrudgingly. So this comma here isn't because it's the end of the list, it's because you have to offset this independent clause over here. Okay, so I have just a couple more. Subject-verb agreement. The shift from diapers to grown-up pants reveal more than a simple coming-of-age story. Let's see if the subject-verb agreement is here. So the shift, that's going to be our subject. From diapers to grown-up pants reveal, that's our verb. So these are prepositional phrases. So then let's just read the sentence without it. The shift reveal. It's clearly wrong. So this is reveals. The shift reveals more than a simple coming-of-age story. Okay. And then lists in complicated sentences. So by using her musical talents everywhere from homeroom to the soccer field and ultimately to the concert hall, Stacy developed new interest from Scouts. So everywhere from homeroom, that's the first item in the list, to the soccer field, and ultimately to the concert hall, Stacy developed new interest from Scouts. So here again, do we need a comma here? Oh, wrong place. Do we need a comma here? So you wouldn't normally to offset a list, but Stacy developed new interest from Scouts. That is subject and verb. And as a note, up here, this is an introductory phrase that actually couldn't stand on its own. Okay, so that is all I have for you today. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions about commas, if you notice any errors. I'm sure I made some. I wanted to make this video even though I know I'm not perfect at punctuation and grammar, because before I read this, Julia Casagrande, oh my god, I said her name wrong, didn't I? Sorry. June Casagrande. So before I read June Casagrande, I didn't get a lot of these rules. I didn't understand why they were, and now that I have a clear grasp of them, grammar and punctuation has become a lot easier for me. And so I just want to share that it can be fun, it can make sense once in a while. You don't just put in commas wherever there is a pause in when someone would speak it. That doesn't make sense. Some people like dramatic pauses anywhere that, that's not a good metric for where you should put your commas. But understanding independent clauses and how you offset them and lists and prepositions, all that, understanding that will really help you get a clear grasp on where commas need to go. Okay, thanks for watching to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little bell thing. See you next week. Bye.